Okay. It's saying I'm live, so I'm going to have to assume that that is the case. I know I'm live here. Hmm. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm live there as well. All right, good. Okay, we're here. It's Saturday, January 6th, um, 2024. This will be the first stream for the new year. If we're going by a calendaric uh, paradigm, as far as time goes, how we compartmentalize our time. Sorry, there's stuff all in my eyes. Um, so here's the Joe Auger hour where he does nothing but dig stuff out of his eyes. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I'm live on Instagram. I'm live on YouTube. Um, yeah, first stream of the new year to millions and millions of people. I hope everybody's holiday seasons were joyful, healthy, safe. As is always the case, one hopes for clean slates and things, but that's not really how time works, and it's certainly not how circumstance works. Uh, the reality is that things continue on their merry way as far as things go. We have Japanese earthquakes, people dying, people getting sick. Kind of just is what it is, and one has to kind of just sort of take it for what it is, which is again, yeah, the reality of our situation. Um, I'm still going to try to look forward with some semblance of hope that one of these days the human animal will do the right thing on circumstantially, just in general. That would be nice. That would be nice. But anyway, that's not why we're here tonight. The So I firstly must apologize um, for postponing from what was it, last week would have been day before New Year's. Sorry, a week into the new year. So I had thrown my back out a little, baking some banana breads, and what are you going to do? Just kind of is what it is. Just making sure my that's up. I often wonder what the Instagram on my phone is like if I don't have my speaker or my speaker's up, if the microphone doesn't work or not. I'm not sure. But anyway, and this is also a drinking game. So, bit of an update as far as the drinking game goes. So, some of you who have been following along, uh, I had found from doing some other YouTube clips and commentary and things about this, that, or the other, that I found that I use when circling back to reiterate a point about whatever, that I use the word again, dot, 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 and then go into my thing, like, a lot. And when I realized it's like, oh God, that's just awful. And it's just like horribly annoying. Probably more for me than anybody else, but it's annoying nonetheless. So what's been interesting? So I've been on a kick to try to not only catch what I'm just about to say it, but if I do say it, especially if I'm live or whatever, that it's a drinking game. So if anybody's here, the millions of people here that are watching and listening on either platform, have a drink with them, whatever drink they want. It could be tea, could be a libation, could be a lovely, winter, kind of toddy kind of situation. But either way, if I were to say the word and I say it's like, oh, take a drink, we take a drink. So the update part of this is that I was listening to a different podcast, and well, a couple things. Not only different podcasts, but also watching the news, like watching about the weather and stuff, and noticed that I'm not the only one who does this. Apparently, um, a lot of people use this weird verbal. I don't know what you would call it. Just I was calling it a verbal tick because I was so unconsciously doing it. Like I really was not aware, and certainly no one has pointed it out to me that I do it. So, but other I was noticing that like a weather person was doing it. Again, when see again right there when circling back, damn it, they were circling back to another point and said that word, and off they went. And like this, the podcast I was listening to, they were doing it over and over and over again. Two different people talking to each other. So I felt a little less, I don't know, self-conscious about it, I suppose. However, I still want to try to limit the amount of times that I do that. I just think it's laziness, unconscious laziness of my speech, my speech patterns or whatever. So I will try. That's all I can do. I more than likely will, I will more than likely, forget or just not be able to do it. Pardon me, this is what happens at 8 o'clock when I'm not dozing on a chair. So tonight, in the New England area, those of us that are up here are awaiting a snowstorm. I don't know how much of a storm it is. It's just that it is the first real sort of plowable snow we've had in many, like almost 3 years at this point. So if nothing else, even if it's not a huge blizzard slash snow event, it's I know the snowplows are excited. They were already out like yesterday, just kind of roaming around. We're looking for snow. It's like, is there snow yet? Is there snow yet? They have a good time. They stay up all night. They drink coffee and they talk to each other on the CB radios and go to Dunkin' Donuts, and it's a party for them. So Anyway, so there were some things that got canceled, in the city, and the tonight, like club stuff, and I thought, well, either way I was going to do this, it didn't matter. I mean, I'm certainly. I'm certainly playing against people doing work in clubs and playing out and stuff like that, and I'm sort of stuck here at home, talking to millions and millions of viewers here on on Instagram or whatever. So the reason why we're here, we can see as I transition to my another page here. So the past, there have been 3 other episodes. I started doing a listen along to the new Beatles remix greatest hits releases that happened last month, that no one was really clamoring for or thought was, it wasn't anything that was on the radar. I think there was a certain amount of like, I don't know. It's listening to people online about the reasons why. I think part of it is to maybe see or like test the waters in regards to remixing the rest of the catalog from Rubber Soul backwards. So basically the first 6 albums. Because from there, all the other for the most part, all of the other albums have been remixed, apart from Magical Mystery Tour, sort of as its own entity. I think as a for me as an engineer, I'm amazingly interested in obviously the remix technology and what they did and the varying sort of degrees of success and not so much, and there's definitely a full kind of range there of like hugely successful remixes that just make things, pop and are refreshed. And then there are some where the remixes either miss something or do something weird to the essence of the song that maybe doesn't, I don't know, kind of show it in its best light. Um, Hard to know what's going on in the minds of those that were remixing these. But the release part of it, these greatest hits albums, the Red and the Blue albums from '73. This was the last thing that Klein produced while he was still kind of managing the Beatles. And at the time, it was to kind of cash in against there was a Alpha Omega TV special product kind of thing that had Beatles stuff on it that was bootleg. It was not a sanctioned release. So Klein was the one who was instrumental in getting these out to make as much money from them as possible. However, as much as the Red and the Blue albums are sort of, there's not much to say about them like visually as far as the album artwork goes. Apart from the Get Back, a picture that mimicked the original Please Me picture. Other than that, fairly substandard kind of design. So I think the thing that I'm hearing and the thing I have to kind of, and I was trying to not listen to other people's critiques of these. I didn't want to be biased. But that was mostly for the music aspect of things. I really wanted to kind of go into it with my own fresh, my own biases, I suppose. But as far as the packaging of it goes, I think there is a missed opportunity here that they could have done something much better. I don't know. They could have done something much better. So, like if you look at the other hits things that have come out recently, recently I say within the last 25 years, specifically like the One album, has a unique cover that is really, really well done. It's got a lovely poster. It's got pictures of picture sleeves of the singles from all over the globe, and it's a really visually entertaining piece. And these not so much. Like they didn't they didn't even add like a poster to them or anything like that. It was just like really cut and dry. The only thing that they added potentially is because these new albums in vinyl have a third LP. Excuse me. Part of the problem with that, so the original LPs had so many tracks. These new remixed reissued LPs have extra tracks, like basically a full LP of extra tracks per thing. But they didn't though they did it on the CD chronologically. So if you listen to the CD or if you buy the what I did, I went to the HD tracks and bought them. Everything's chronologically, as chronologically as released, and the LP version is not so much. What they did is they just replicated the original Red Blue albums, record 1 and 2 correct the same way, and then just added this third vinyl that has all these other disparate tracks that are not in chronological order. So kind of weird, kind of strange, kind of an odd, I don't know, flippant kind of way to do it. I don't know. What do I know? But I think that there was a missed opportunity. The fact that also that they didn't add "Free as a Bird" and "Real Love" to this package, which I really don't understand. I mean, maybe it's because it was already it was already re-released on the One album or the DVD part of it. Maybe they have other plans for that. So there's rumors going around now that since Peter Jackson is involved with his company regarding the machine learning stuff that demixed all of this stuff, but also in salvaging and preserving old well, like he did for the Get Back documentary, obviously. Um, so there's never been a Blu-ray version of the anthology documentary that happened in 94, 95. Um, so one of the things that could really happen here with that is not only um, a the pictures being used could be transferred in a higher quality, but also the music. So they could do machine learning to like all of the live um, things and really, I mean, really make a stunning document. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe that's why, and the fact that like, the fact that we didn't get a Rubber Soul box set this Christmas, but we did get the Now and Then single, is one thing. I got to think that considering what they did remix from the first, six albums, from Please Please Me, With the Beatles, Hard Day's Night, Beatles for Sale, then Help, and then Rubber Soul, that they must have already remixed these things. I can't think that they haven't. And Rubber Soul, there's only out of the 16 songs that they recorded during those sessions, 9 of them are remixed and on this record. So there's only 6 more songs there to make the box set, and then add the stuff in that they have to, or So there's so many possibilities, and it's sort of kind of hard to get a sense of what they're trying to do. Like what's going to happen with the coming year. We know that there's solo stuff coming up from McCartney and Lennon. Lennon's Mind Games box set's coming out. There's rumors about George Harrison having even more vault songs that have never been released that maybe Donnie and or Jeff Lynne are working on to try to do maybe another posthumous release of stuff, which would be that would be probably the biggest news of anything at that point. Apparently McCartney's working on another solo album along with his archive series. I mean, there's still a lot. There's the idea that maybe Ringo will put a box set out of the Ringo album from '73, because that would make sense. That's the 50th anniversary was this past year, so it would make sense. So all that said, I think that these releases, these remixes are worthy enough in and of themselves, in a sideways kind of way. I'm sure they're selling well. I would be interested to hear what the stats of these are after the Christmas, since the Christmas season's over, and what they've sold and what how many they've sold. I mean, Now and Then apparently is breaking all kinds of records for longevity for even the Beatles themselves, like for long length of time of a single being on the charts or stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't have the stats in front of me, but so there you go. That's the whole brief of what's happening with these. And so part 1 and part 2 were the Red album. And those are already up online, and you don't need to watch this live to go back and do the listen and watch and listen thing. But it is specific to the remixes. So if you've got the old versions of the Red and Blue albums and you're trying to do it that way, it's not going to work because it's not the same thing. So so that's part 1, part 2 are up. Part 3, which was the first half of the Blue album, is also up. I noticed that some people are visiting that one, which is kind of cool. So that's a good thing. So the last stream that I did started with Strawberry Fields Forever, which again, he said again. Starts 1967, going through the Sgt. Pepper, All You Need Is Love, Magical Mystery Tour, and then early singles into Hey Bulldog from '68. And we left off from there, which we're going to start with Back in the USSR. So it will we will go through the White Album tracks, which are not a lot on that. It's not really well represented on this record. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's only 6 songs from the White Album on this. I mean, it's a 2 record set, so I know they had to kind of make some decisions. But then there's the singles in between things, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from Abbey Road, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 from the Let It Be album. So it's I guess it's difficult to make a record like this of like, how do you? I mean, it's the Beatles. It was like, how do you distill that career into small batches of LPs in a greatest hits kind of fashion? So anyway, so that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the White Album, the Back in the USSR. So these mixes are from 2018, which was the White Album remix that, Giles Martin did for that 50th anniversary. These are not AI demix. These are just remixes of the existing multi-tracks at the time. So mostly 8-track tape, which still exist. And so there really wasn't much he had to do but remix. There was no AI involved in these. It would be an interesting thought, though, considering that, say, like the drums are all still in mono at the time. So White Album, they were still doing a drum track all in mono with all of the drum cymbals, etc. So it was all, there was no stereo spread of the drums themselves. So who knows? Might be interesting to see that, though. The question would be, would I buy a yet another remix of the White Album that they used AI machine learning on to further demix things? Yes, I would. yes, I would. It would be the however nth time I've bought the White Album. And then it'll be the same pretty much for now. What's interesting is the Get Back, Ballad of John and Yoko mixes. These are from the singles, are from 2015. So I don't know what that's from or what that's supposed to have been from, because I don't remember what release would have happened at that time that would have had him be remixing that early on. I don't know. That's another one. And then there's one random remix of Old Brown Shoe, a brand new 2023 mix. So I don't know. Maybe that one is somehow AI demixed. I don't know, but that would have been an 8-track tape recording. So a lot of mystery, at least in my mind, as far as that goes. Then when we get into Abbey Road, those are the 2019 mixes from the 50th anniversary remix box set of that album. Once again, those are all 8-track tapes, no AI demixing involved. They were actually doing a stereo drum track there, so not really a huge need, I think, for those to be ever remixed for any reason, I think. And then Let It Be 2021. These are obviously the remixes that happened and concurrently with the Get Back documentary. So and also as part of the Let It Be box set. So, and then it ends with the new single Now and Then. It's I've been chit-chatting for about 25 minutes. So why don't we get it going? For the millions of people out there following along, as usual, I will start the process. I will hit play. I will hope that my headphones are not loud enough for the Instagram to kind of shut itself off, because I think it was on the first or the second one. I must have had them too loud because it somehow Instagram could sense I was playing music, even though I'm not playing it live. The whole point is for you all to listen along on your end. Somehow it heard it. It must have heard something, and the algorithm just somehow was able to catch on to it. So hopefully that won't be the case. I think I've got all the settings dialed in so that it shouldn't hear anything. And then, so there you go. And here we go. So we're going to start with the White Album. This is from the Beatles 67, 1970, 2023 remix edition. These are the box set remixes from 2018. Here we start with Back in the USSR. First thing you notice is the clarity of the recording. Kind of striking. Paul on drums, remember? So that's interesting. So a couple of things that happen there is you hear a little bit more of Paul McCartney's over earnest vocalizations. So the this was around the time where McCartney was certainly kind of steering the van, shall we say, for good or bad. Um, Clearly, the other Beatles were sort of like, all right, whatever. And you can kind of hear it. He's trying real kind of hard to kind of whoop him up a little bit by vocalize. It kind of from this point on through to the rest of their career, he did it a lot. It was sort of like, I think it was his way of trying to get them involved and get them excited or whatever. And in hindsight, knowing the history, unfortunately, you can kind of, if you have that in your head, I try and give Macca a pass because but you can kind of hear it. You can kind of hear the sort of over earnestness of his thing. That being said, he back in the USSR, Ringo had quit by this point, so Paul did the drumming on this, and it's everything sounds very very clear and very very airy and different, somewhat different. What's interesting on this greatest hits record though is that back in the USSR normally dovetails and crossfades directly into Dear Prudence. And the next song is Dear Prudence on the greatest hits. So what it ends up doing is that, and it did this earlier with A Day in the Life, is it actually gives you a clean start of the songs that were crossfaded originally. So it's worth it having those like that anyway. It's like it's a fully different mix. It's fully kind of separate. So, though obviously on the White Album box set, it crossfades as it normally should, though. So now, next up, if we go to Dear Prudence, you're going to hear a nice clean start. Here we go. It's striking to hear those arpeggios just clean from the start. And another album song with Paul on drums. Um, so, dear Prudence, what's striking about these remixes is that, um, and this was something I noticed when I first listened to the box set, of course. Um, I mean, it refreshes these songs in a way that's really gives you a sense of like, wow, this must have been, when this album was originally released, when people were first listening to it, of how different it sounds, especially on the heels of Sergeant Pepper, and Magical Mystery Tour for that matter. Um, it's very raw and very much looser. Um, the sounds are, Ringo was heavily using the tea towels on his drums, so those sounded a lot more muted. Um, and I think the White Album, it's in general, we're talking from the original mix and master of this, always had a bit of a I want to say kind of like it was a very claustrophobic, I guess is the only word that I can use to describe it in my thinking about it when I listened to that record, the original version of the record. Um, there's a very, very specific sound. The White Album sounds like no other album, and some of that I think is due to the mastering too. So, um, to the degree that they were able to match and or capture that, not so sure. Obviously everything is there in the mix. You're hearing all the various elements that and more of things that you never heard before, and just the balance of things playing against each other and all that is there. But so it's one of those things where it's sort of, well, one of the things I would like to do when I have time on my hands is to do an A/B comparison of the original mixes, the original stereo mono mixes, and the new remixes, as I did with the Sgt. Pepper album. That's going to take some time, but I do want to do it because I think it's potentially essential and useful to those of us who, obviously are Beatles crazy. So, yeah, I think the mastering of these albums at the time were obviously very instrumental. The story goes that the original White Album remaster, the original White Album master, the first run, did not, as far as George Harrison was concerned, was not up to snuff, and he basically stepped in, which was, when you think about it at the time, was a pretty ballsy move for him to say, I'm not putting that out, fuck you. It's like, so he went and had the White Album remastered. This is George Harrison did this. Like, this wasn't, well, Epstein was dead by this, but the powers that be at Apple, John and Paul, they weren't interested at that point. He basically said, yeah, no, we're going to remaster this because does not sound the way it should sound. So sure enough, that made it's one of the things I need to do is I need to go and look at my White Album collection and find out if I've got any of the original the original sort of set of pressings of the original stampers, because those are pretty rare apparently. Anyway, so next up we have While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and here we go. We're going to play that. Speaking of George, Ringo back into the saddle here. You can tell. Clapton there on lead. Supposedly John Lennon on bass on this one. Learned a few things from McCartney. Hmm. Very interesting that what happens in that mix is, you know, it opens up everything around each instrument. Everything is very airy. One thing that's missing from this is the original mix of it was a lot more use of not very speed, but flanging on some of the things that clearly must have happened in the mix stage of of the original record, especially toward the end part of the song. Um, One of the things you realize that is happening on the end part of the song, the final solo, the sort of woo, 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 the sort of wobbly sounds, is uh, other than clearly hearing George Harrison's voice, but it must. I'm assuming it's probably Paul doing that sort of high warble or vibrato note. But in the original mixes, one wouldn't know what that. It's not clear that it's a voice, and I think that's what's different here in these mixes that the original, that is slightly missing, is that these mixes are almost too good. I say that in a way that is sort of like, on the one hand, it's sort of like being able to hear the instruments really in high relief is amazing. And um, in the Sergeant Pepper remix, it it enhanced it much more in a way that was like, like it didn't detract from what was happening originally. These remixes of the White Album, and I thought this when I first, listened to it, is that there's a there's a glue that feels missing from it. There's a mystery that was baked into those original mixes and those original masters that you're not going to recapture. There's something about the White Album sessions and the way that album was handled that, I don't know, there was something about it that's just sort of mysterious. It's always been a very mysterious record for me. Sergeant Pepper was more esoteric, but it was very in your face and it was very obvious what it was. Whereas the White Album is sort of like this monolithic, alien thing, and that's what it was. It's like it sounded alien. Even though you knew it was the Beatles and it was very obvious that it was the Beatles. And even but it was just the sheer breadth of the record and the different genres and the sounds and the way things were recorded, mixed, and performed was just very odd to me. So you're hearing some of that, but it's just the mixes. I don't. These new mixes don't really do justice to the original record. I'm going to say it. And it kind of pains me to say it because, you know, in listening to the Sgt. Pepper remix, to me, that's about as definitive as it gets as far as just the way that it sounds and the way it was done, the way they approached it. White Album, it's a little different. It's a little different, to be honest. I would have almost, I would have liked, or I would have been interesting to hear them do a remix in mono of the White Album. I would have really been interested. It would have been interesting to hear what that would have sounded like. Anyway, so going forward, so the other thing that I'm noticing is that, and I didn't notice it. Basically, the what apart from Blackbird, all of these other White Album pieces are all from the first side. Like, it doesn't even go into the breadth of like the other sides apart from Blackbird. Like I said, weird, very weird, very weird to me. Anyway, so next up would be Obla Di Blah Blah Da, and here we go, hitting that. Yeah, this still should have been a single. I mean, it was a single in the '70s and did pretty well, but they should have released this as a single on its own. You know, bit of fluff from Paul there, but should have been a single. Not really much to remark on this in general. Kind of the same of what I've been saying, that the White Album remixes are sort of yeah. One wonders if the mastering, if there were mastering notes on the original, for the original record, that if there were notes as to how to what the mastering should be, what the levels should be, etc. If any of that was really looked upon at all. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe the mastering of these particular songs maybe didn't do them justice. Anyway, next up would be Glass Onion. So here we go. George Martin score popping here for sure. Um, Same with that. Like that end violin, or string thing feels softer. Like suddenly it's like from here, then it's suddenly centered, but it's not filling the whole scene there. I don't know. I'm just gonna go straight into Blackbird. Here we go. So Blackbird, that's pretty simple. I mean, it's just Paul and some and guitar, some of it double tracked and all that. So that's same thing, not really much different, but mastered differently. Sounds different to me, you know. Um, and that's the White Album. You know, part of me is sort of wary of doing an A/B comparison of the original to the new, mainly because I was not as impressed with the newer remixes than I was of like Sergeant Pepper, obviously. So don't know. I don't know. How that's going to work, or whether I'm going to do it, or if I do it, how I'm going to approach it. Um, so I don't know. A lot of things I got to think about is whether or not to do that, because I certainly don't want to just put out a one or two part White Album comparison thing that basically just completely disparages the new remix, because that wouldn't be the point. The point would be what the differences are, and to the degree that the differences are worthy, or make the case for remixing like Sergeant Pepper did, and we're and making the case for some of the other remixes that have happened on the Red Album, etc. So yeah, I think that I don't know, the White Album was always going to be a bit of a I don't know, trying to replicate what they were capturing during that time. I don't know. There was something else in the studio with them, and I don't just mean Yoko Ono. Anyway, so we already listened to Hey Bulldog in the last stream, mainly because even though it was originally released on Yellow Submarine, in between these two things, it was recorded back in the beginning of '68 alongside Lady Madonna and Across the Universe. That's right. I know Across the Universe comes up here later, but that's the later version. Anyway, so here we are at Get Back, in be January of '69. The next two from 2015 mixes. Don't know why. I'll say it again because I can, but I really want to. These aren't the only mixes from 2015 that these are from. So I don't know if these were experimental at the time or what. So it's just weird. But Get Back. This is the original single that happened at the beginning of '69. After the Get Back sessions, but long before the album, a year before the actual album was released. So why they didn't take a longer break in between things, I don't know. They set themselves up for a real fall after the White Album was released, and then immediately going back to work right after, like literally a month later. Very weird. But anyway, this is the single version of Get Back. JoJo. I remember when this first came out in '69. It's one of my earliest memories of the Beatles. And I always thought that this song was about me. See, oddly, the mix of this song somehow uh, really benefits from a remix. And actually, they sound a lot tighter here than they ever did for White Album. Yeah, so that like for some reason, and the irony of this is that I the Let It Be slash Get Back era, to use a modern, you know, uh, descriptive, um, was has never been my favorite of the Beatles, for obvious reasons. I'm sure I'm not the only one. However, um, unlike the White Album mixes we were just talking about, which though I love the White Album, I don't love these new remixes. It feels like there's something missing. Whereas, excuse me, the new mixes from here going forward, especially of the Get Back stuff, which I'm tempted actually to kind of do this differently. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, I may want to just actually continue on this tack and um, go instead of how things were released, but how things were recorded. So I might actually just do that. Go to Let It Be specific things, then Ballad of John and Yoko, Old Brown Shoe, and then I'm doing this on the fly, folks. So anyway, um, they sound punchier and tighter, oddly, during the Let It Be sessions. Maybe the tension that was needed to try and that they were going through was somehow very unconsciously or subconsciously adding to just you can certainly see it in the documentary. But anyway, I think that like that mix of the single mix of Get Back, I think is great. I think it's like does it add anything huge or different or weird or something you didn't hear before? Not really, other than just being able to really hear everything in a nice refreshed manner. So going forward, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip further from the go to track. For those of you following along, all you millions of people out there following along, I'm going to currently skip over. That was track 23 on the Blue album. I'm going to skip over and we're going to go straight to track 33, which is the looking at the Let It Be stuff now. So this will be the Let It Be mix. These will be the mixes from 2021. So here we go. Let It Be. Non-specterized. So we're not having a slapback on the hi-hat here. Thank God. What they did, even though the choir and the orchestrations are there, they're much more in the background. Like more emphasis on the gospel piano and organ. Yeah, I think that mix of Let It Be is so much better than you know the original mix. To be quite honest, I think that it brings the orchestration and the chorus to into a much better space. You're hearing more of the band than you are of that. Which is that's the way it should be, obviously. Um, Sorry, I'm just futzing with the thing here. Um, yeah, so the Let It Be era certainly sounds a lot better served by remixing. So next up, it would be Across the Universe, though this is a recording from early '68 mostly, then with additions after. So Across the Universe. Specterized, but a little bit less. So, Across the Universe, Phil Spector, of course, did the arrangements on that one, added the chorus and the strings and the harp and the whole thing. The original mixes of which just are, in my mind, just not, I don't, it obscures the song. At least these remixes are kind of placing them a little bit further behind a little bit. You certainly still hear it. It more than anything, though, it remedies aspects of the song. Thank goodness. It does make me yearn to think, oh, what would George Martin have been able to do better on that arrangement wise? Spector's arrangements notwithstanding, they are what they are, and they're not bad. They're just, in my mind, just for the song, just, I don't know, overdone. But thankfully, the remix remedies that and makes it a little more psychedelic sounding. It's a little more sort of things in the background, thankfully. So I will give it that due, at least. All right, so then next up would be I Mean Mine, which the January 6th, I think, is close to the last day that the Beatles would have had a recording session as the Beatles, where there were at least 3 in attendance. Lennon was out of the picture at this point. This would have been 1970. So yeah, you're talking 54 years now. This is I Mean Mine. So this is from George Harrison. So yeah, good final song from the original era, of course. Um, Same though, remix. The remix does it some justice with by putting the orchestrations a little bit kind of in the background a little bit. So, one of George's better, I think, melodies, especially in that kind of bridge B section there, kind of very manic sounding, very panicked sounding. Then we go into the Long and Winding Road. Now, there's the Let It Be Naked mixes too of all of these, which I certainly prefer, in all honesty, because it does get rid of all of the sort of extraneous orchestrations that were originally not, as part of the purview, as part of the policy, that like they weren't going to do overdubs and things. Sorry, I'm grabbing another drink here. But then they did, And then so those I prefer those mixes because it goes back to the actual true sort of idea of what that album was supposed to sound like, but with good mixes. Anyway, so Long and Winding Road. Um, Here we go. Yeah, yeah. This is where the specterization gets ridiculous. I mean, the orchestra starts to like drown out his voice. Yeah, that's that. So I guess what do you do in remixing that original from the album version? With the choir and the harps and the brass and the strings and the whole. It's just too much. It's like, yeah, I can understand why McCartney was just pissed off because that was not the point of that. And when you listen to the original unadorned version of that take, I believe it's the same take on the Let It Be Naked remix album. I mean, the song and the performance makes you can it made me cry. With all this that mawkish shit on top of it, it's just like, ugh. So, excuse me. Unfortunately, the remix of this is kind of not much different than the original, in that the orchestra was not pushed to the background, and I think the reason it because of the nature of the arrangement itself, if they were to remix it with it a little further into the background, it would have sounded like it's just not loud enough, because the way Spector arranged it, he basically seemingly purposefully arranged it. It's like, I'm going to put a bunch of shit on here that I want you to pay more attention to than McCartney's vocal or piano or the rest of the band. That's what it just feels like. I don't know, and I've always felt that way about the song, which is a shame because the song itself is beautiful. So there's that. That's pretty much the Let It Be era of things. So now we get into what would have been them working on things after the fact. That era. So that would have been, getting into the next single, which was Ballad of John Yoko, which is just John and Paul. So let's go to the ballad. This is also another 2015 mix of why that's there. I don't know. Might be because the only thing I can think of that these are there for is that these must be the mixes that were done for the One album. That's the only thing I can think for, because for the DVD or Blu-ray, I mean they remixed these in 5.1. So that's the only thing I can think that that's what these are from. Anyway, so here's the Ballad of John and Yoko. Oh, out of tune guitar, funny. Oh, John. At least they sound like they're having some fun, though. Probably the last bit of fun they had together. You know, that's a good. You know, thinking back when that would have been released in 1969 as a single, as the A side of a single. You know, definitely Lennon poking the media bear with the expletive of Christ. You know what I mean? The way things are going, they're going to crucify me. It's just like, yeah, I mean, come on, dude. he knew what he was doing. He knew he was pushing the envelope there, and people bought it. Everybody bought it. It is what it is, and at least him and Paul were having some fun doing the recording, and you can hear it. You can certainly hear it. And when you hear it on the I believe it's the Abbey Road box set. There's there's another take of it, and you can kind of hear John and Paul, having some fun. So anyway, the flip side of that is a George Harrison song, and that song is "Old Brown Shoe." This is a new remix, assuming that it is not an AI demix. I don't think it would need to be because it would have been recorded on 8-track at the time. So this is Old Brown Shoe. Also, one of the last times that all four were working on one of George Harrison's songs. Interesting. The voices are really distorted. I don't remember them that way in the original mix. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd want to listen to an A/B of this. Yeah, that's always been a weird song, but um, the remix of it highlights some weird things that I don't remember from the original. Specifically, the voices sound very distant and distorted, and I don't know. I have to assume that that's how it went down onto tape, and that's what they found when they remixed it, and that's what it sounds like. I don't know. I don't know. It's obviously meant to sound very raw and rough, and it certainly does. But they do. But they sound tight together. That's for sure. Um, Tighter than they ever did. Especially after the White Album. Um, so now we're dovetailing into the final run through here, which will be the final 6 songs, which will be from Abbey Road. One of the things that's interesting to me is that they didn't put like the final and in the end part of side 2 on this. Obviously, they put both of Harrison's songs on there. That obviously makes sense. But then now they've added Octopus's Garden. Um, this is probably one of the only times where we're not seeing the multitude of Paul songs. You got 2 from, well, if you want to include Old Brown Shoe, which we just listened to. Here Comes the Sun, Something. So there's 2 from George, 1 from Ringo, and then 2 from Lennon, and then only 1 from McCartney on this on this hits package. So interesting how the times were changing and definitely tilting toward Harrison for sure. But let's mix it up a little bit, going from track 26 to track 28, which has Come Together, which would be obviously the start of the Abbey Road album proper. And all of the Abbey Road mixes are from the 2019 50th anniversary Abbey box set remix. And so here we go. We're going to start with Come Together, track 28, by the way. Here we go. And already the remix of this sounds fantastic. You can actually hear the snares on the snare drum rattling during that little section there. You can really hear how tight they are as a band here. Hear a few little other little dingy things there on the guitar. Cool. Yeah, that's you can already hear the difference between what the remix did for Abbey Road as opposed to the White Album remixes. Um, really exposed the and you can really hear the difference between the mixing board too. Abbey Road was the first album to use the full, not full, the new solid state mixing console, and you can hear it. You can definitely hear the difference, and it's an interesting, those anybody who understands what they were using and has followed the technology can really hear that you know the difference there. So I think that that was the first thing I noticed. With these Abbey Road remixes, that they the whatever they recorded just takes to the remix a lot better than the White Album ones did. Once again, noticing about the greatest hits is that it's mostly side one of Abbey Road, apart from Here Comes the Sun. Minus Maxwell Silver Hammer. So we're gonna head straight into something. And here we go. And the immediate difference between George Martin's arrangements and Phil Spector's is just night and day in class, just classier. And less obtrusive. Plucked violins. And Macca's very busy bass. I think the difference you can hear in the Abbey Road um, pieces is once again the influence of George Martin. McCartney called him up after the Get Back recordings, and Martin was surprised that that he wanted to have him do another album like he used to, or whatever, and you can hear it. You can hear that there's a I don't know. There's a sound to the proceedings which is not there on the White Album. There's a reason for that. The White Album, Martin had much less to do. because they wouldn't let him do anything. Um, he would, what little they had him do. I think that's maybe the problem with the White Album, and on some levels, is that it wasn't really produced. I mean, there's arrangements on it, but I don't know. There was an aspect of it that was not produced. I say that now. However, it also comes down to, I think, a certain amount of the mastering. Just something is different. But these Abbey Road remixes are great. You can really hear, especially on that middle section, which is something just didn't register before. But those little, they're plucked. The orchestra, the violins are plucking their strings, doing that. Don't you stick around them? It may show. Don't you hear those little plucks in the background? Then that's the violins. For some reason, I just never. I don't know. You don't hear it as violins on the original mix of it. So that's the lovely thing about these remixes, that you're hearing the real, the depth of what's going on there. All right, next up is Ringo's Octopus's Garden. So here we go. One thing I noticed on that's interesting, though, you know, remix is great. It's fun. It's still, it's still Octopus's Garden. Um, One thing I definitely noticed on Ringo's voice is there's a distortion there that is definitely not analog sounding. One has to assume, excuse me, that was what is on those tapes. So was it recorded with a little bit of fuzziness on the top, or is that something that was added after the fact? It's kind of hard to tell. I'm going to somewhat assume it's the latter, just because of the nature of how remixing from old tapes is, etc. And using that new mixing desk. That's what I hear with these recordings from the Abbey Road sessions, is that there's there's a more of that solid state kind of, it's a different kind of richness that the other more analog tube based mixers had, that this mixing board did not have. It's a little different. So I hear those differences. To me, they're very obvious. That being said, it's not bad. It's just different. And then next up, we would go to Oh Darling. Here we go. This is about John. It's got to be. I never thought of that before. So, in listening to this remix, I'm not sure if I've thought this before about this song or not, but I think it was along one of potentially the first, maybe, you know, songs aimed at someone like, oh, I don't know, his old writing partner, John Lennon. If you think about what the lyrics are saying, and then this has nothing to do with the remix at this point, this is just my own sort of supposition about the origins of the song, etc. Um, Clearly, something changed in 1968, even before Yoko was part of the picture. Something happened to change the relationship between John and Paul very seriously, and I think it's something that no one really even knows. it's been talked about ad infinitum, even by the Beatles themselves. But I don't know, something changed, and I just have this thought and or this idea that they got into a Barney at some point, and I could see Lennon saying something to the effect to Paul, just to hurt him, saying, look, when you told me you didn't need me anymore. I can hear Lennon saying that to McCartney. He says, I don't need you anymore. I've got Yoko and all this. Cause like just to be hurtful, like purposefully, and how cut to the quick that could have like really sliced into McCartney's heart, like really like to the degree that, because this is angry. His vocal is so angry on this, but it's beautiful. It's wonderful. Story goes is that he came in every day for a week before everybody else did, and just kind of sang his voice haggard until he got the take. And but yeah, just another great arrangement, and the remix does it really good, real justice. I want to say that maybe the remixes to Abbey Road are the closest to sounding to the original. Don't know if it's because of the nature of what they were using technologically. You know, hard to say. But they were also using 8-track, so not only the amount of information on tape, as opposed to 4-track tape, which is what Sergeant Pepper was, and Revolver, etc. were recorded on. There was more width on those tapes. So I don't know. You can hear just the depth of the instruments are a little different. It feels different. Whereas Sergeant Pepper, they were able to really find a fatness to everything they recorded. So then next up we'll go. Well, we just basically have a couple more for Abbey Road. We're gonna go to I Want You, She's So Heavy. And then we'll go to Here Comes the Sun. We'll end off on that piece, from Abbey Road. Though I am going to play Now and Then, of course. Anyway, this is I Want You, She's So Heavy. Here we go. Billy Preston on organ. This was what the band sounded like as a 5-piece, and unfortunately, just never really carried forward. variations on a theme, the movements of this song. Another one thing you can hear in these remixes is some more of the stuff in the background. And then they edit to what will end up being the long fade. Not long fade, but the long outro, which is still just ridiculously powerful. They put the original rehearsal take of this from on the Abbey Road box set, and first time I listened to it, I was in the car. I was freaking out about how good it sounded. At one point, this was going to end the album. And that Moog White noise is so sinister. Interesting. I can hear. So when they click on that final edit, right? You can hear in this mix, and I hadn't heard it before, in the original mix of this and the original release of it, and it was born out apparently from Lennon when it was being mixed, of where to cut it, because obviously it keeps going, and literally cut it. So when you hear the original album version of it, you hear, and it's different. You can hear the difference. You hear a cut. You can hear where a scissor went cut into tape, because there's a flutter there. There's a little wow there. Here, this very end here, you can hear it. They didn't, and it's different. I mean, it's the difference between tape and digital, right? You can hear just ever so slightly that it's not a cut per se. It's an extreme volume, like like curve. So it's a little different, not the same effect. So man, these are the things that remixing isn't good for on some levels. Like in other words, if they were going to really reproduce what that sounded like, then what they would have needed to do was to remix it, dump it to a tape machine, a good 2-track, like a good 1-inch half-track machine or something, and physically cut the tape to really get the effect correct. So all that said, the remix sounds wonderful, and just it does just accentuate that particular piece as being as a song. Yeah, it's not a song per se. It's a variation on a theme. Clearly, it's just like a little thing that Lennon did, but it goes through these movements instrumentally and otherwise, and it's powerful in its own odd way. And once that Moog white noise comes in, it's such a great, at the time, 1969. It's a great continuation of what they were doing with electronics and tape manipulation and the things that were already happening in the sort of avant-garde world regarding things like that. Things that John Cage was doing, things that Zappa was doing, things that a lot of other electronic synthesizer artists were doing, and to put something like that over just something like just a white noise generator and like nothing melodic about it whatsoever over the top of the end of that is just sort of like this. Yeah, it's a swirling storm sound and at one point that was what was supposed to have ended the album until it got flipped, and then it didn't. So and then we have one more for Abbey Road, so it'll be track 27 from the record. So we'll end the Abbey Road era with Here Comes the Sun, which would have opened up side 2, obviously, of Abbey Road. Immediately, this remix is just gorgeous. You can hear more of what Paul is doing on bass, but it's a lot less busy than Something, for sure. I mean, it's there, but one thing that's immediately clear from this new remix, another instance of, especially on the Moog synthesizer, sort of flutish sound that's happening there. In the original mixes of it, when they're doing it, they're clearly doing some tape manipulation by flanging, that you're not hearing on this remix. So you're just hearing straight sounds without any kind of flanging. So some differences there. Sounds a little more smooth, a little bit less warbly, I suppose. Either way, I suppose it doesn't. It's just different. It's just different. The song. Thankfully, this is one of those situations where, I mean, the song itself and the treatment and the production is already top notch. That I don't think you could probably do a bad mix of this song. And on the box set, I believe you can hear there was a solo, a solo that was on the tracks that just was not part of the mix. So that would bring us to the last song for the evening. Excuse me, which would be Now and Then, which was obviously released just a little over a month or two ago, thereabouts. So we're out of the remixes of the original catalog from the greatest hits record at this point, and we are on now to what would be the final, quote unquote, final Beatles song. Everybody, I think, knows at this point that this was taken from a John Lennon demo from late 70s, from a cassette of him playing piano and singing, and that AI machine learning that Peter Jackson created or invented, developed, don't know what the word would be, called Mal, which I think is really lovely and a great irony that it is called Mal, was able to strip John Lennon's vocal from the piano and from the extraneous sounds on the cassette tape and create a stem of vocal of just John that McCartney and Ringo and George had done work on back in 95, lay fallow for 25 years, almost 30 years now, and I think about it. And then so there are bits used from 95, but then obviously bits used from more recent. What's different about this particular thing is that it comes down to one bit from this that was left off from the demo. There's like a B section that was edited out, which that's probably my biggest disappointment, is that one little section is left out and wasn't fleshed out. Thankfully, someone else online did that and did a pretty perfect edit using that B section. So and that's fine. It just comes down to like, well, that's the new paradigm, I guess, is that the Beatles are everybody's now. They're not just for the Beatles. They're going to be manipulated and re-edited and edited by people who can have the wherewithal to do that. So I'm going to play Now and Then, the version as released. Here we go. So, yeah, it's a touching thing, and as I had been saying regarding back in '68, where you can definitely hear that John and Paul's relationship changed, and how my theory potentially is that you can hear here you can kind of hear maybe what happened, that there was some sort of an argument or something. Lennon might have said something really hurtful regarding saying I don't need you anymore, um, which set them on a path, a very set them on a different path for sure. However, you can look at lyrically at the end of the '70s when things were, they had made amends to the degree they could, I suppose, and the songs that were on that demo, which were "Freeze a Bird," "Real Love," "Now and Then," and also "Grow Old with Me." By the way, so there was 4 songs, all of which have a very similar kind of serendipitous kind of vibe of looking back, kind of nostalgic, you know kind of frame of reference regarding, at least coming from Lennon, from what you can see. So you can certainly infer that the lyrics of "Now and Then" could once again be Lennon talking to McCartney for sure, and I think McCartney wants to think that as well. And something, I'm okay with that. Whether it's true or not, I mean, it kind of doesn't matter anymore. Could be about a number of different things, however you want to interpret it. I'm okay with interpreting it because you can kind of hear it with Lennon's beautifully rendered voice on this. That it could very well be, "Now and Then I miss you." It's like, I mean, it can't be about Yoko because he's living with her on a day-to-day basis. So it's got to be, oh, come on. Oh, God damn it. Sorry. Apparently, my Instagram once again was it must have it. God damn it! It must have heard the algorithm. It's so funny. It's just so stupid. So now my whole, yeah. All right. Well, anybody that was up on Instagram, I'm back up now because they can kind of suck it. I wasn't playing any music, asshole. It's like, what the fuck, man. Stupid, really stupid. Anyway, so as I was saying, I prefer to think that potentially the song is about Lennon's kind of talking about McCartney. "Now and Then I miss you." I mean, who else could it be about? I mean, I don't know. Excuse me. Anyway, so that's the end of the greatest hits remixes, and as far as the remixes goes, especially in the excuse me, as a kind of a summary. Pardon me, I'm very gassy because I've been drinking Virgil's zero sugar root beer. It's not a plug because I'm not. I don't have a sponsorship, unfortunately. Be nice if I did. So, just as a summary of everything, if we're going back to the Beatles 62, 66 remixes, a lot of the Red Album is more not important, but just more as far as the releases of remixes goes. All of this stuff from "Love Me Do" through to "She Loves You," which does not exist as a multi-track tape. All of these things here, all of these remixes, some of which are better than others, some of which are just ridiculously good and mind-blowing. And these remixes, more than anything, really prove to me that Ringo Starr is a genius percussionist, not just a drummer. And then when you start getting into the Rubber Soul era, we have 9 of 16 songs that were worked on during those sessions that are remixed here from We Can Work It Out, Day Tripper, Drive My Car, Norwegian Wood, Nowhere Man, Michelle, In My Life, If I Needed Someone, and Girl. There's only 6 more songs they need to remix if they haven't already to make a Rubber Soul box set. Let's get on it. I really want to see it. My theory is that what they're going to do now to commemorate 60th anniversaries of things is that they will now maybe do box sets starting from Please Please Me and then going forward or something like that. I don't know. Because 63, they're already too late for Please Please Me, which was 62 or early 63, and then with the Beatles, which was also November of 63, so they've missed that anniversary. But Hard Day's Night's coming up for 60th anniversary, so I don't know. It'll remain to be seen. Anyway, those remixes are really great, and then we started getting into the Revolver era, which was the most recent of the remix box sets, which once again revelatory on many levels, and definitely get those box sets. And then we're from what we just did. So starting at the last part 3, starting from Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane, into the Sgt. Pepper remixes, which were already revelatory from the box set. And then a few bits and pieces from the Magical Mystery Tour, some of which are revelatory, some of which are sort of odd, like the I Am the Walrus remix that they did here. They took some liberties that were just sort of, not so sure. But Magical Mystery Tour as a box set needs to happen as well. And then some of the other periphery bits and pieces from early 68. Hey Bulldog remix is splendiferous. And then we get to the White Album remixes, which to me just don't make it. And I don't think it's Giles Martin's fault. I just don't think that those sessions are replicatable, if that makes any sense. But then we get into the era of Get Back / Let It Be, which I wish they had put more on this record of the more band-oriented things, because those are the things that seem to sound the best. Then we get into Abbey Road, which sound really, really good as well. And then that's it. So would I suggest to anyone to purchase the greatest hits remixes? Yes, I would. Do you feel would I feel the need to tell someone you need to buy the triple vinyl disc versions of these? Only if you want to, if you want to shell out to $100 for the box sets of, that's fine. It's a piece, it's collectible stuff or whatever. I'm not buying them, to be honest. I may not even buy the CD versions. Let that come in a little box set as well. Each has 2 CDs. I've bought the high def WAV files from HD Tracks, and I think for these remixes, I'm pretty much okay with those. Even though I bought the box sets for like Sgt. Pepper, Revolver, White Album, Abbey Road, Let It Be. I also bought. Well, I haven't bought the high def versions of the White Album, Abbey Road, or Let It Be yet, but I did for Revolver and Sgt. Pepper. So I do want to do that, just to have those, and those will be basically what I listen to more than anything, because I've just been getting into the higher definition files. I don't know if that's whether that's a thing regarding my hearing or whatever, but I just feel like I hear things better. I hear more things that I want to hear out of the high def files. But anyway, so on that note, it's 10:30. I've been here for 2.5 hours, doing this for 2 hours in general, with millions of people coming through. Instagram shutting me down again. Fuck you, Instagram. I wasn't even playing music, so how could you have assumed I was playing music if you couldn't hear it? That doesn't make any sense to me. So just weird. So there you go. But if you decide you want to come back and do a re-listen along where I'm not live, then you can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to call it a night. I need to get a little late night nosh. I got to go look outside, see what's going on with the snowstorm, and then call it. So I think from there, as far as the next stream goes, I'm not sure. I have I might do like I have my birthday's coming up on Sunday the 28th. So I might do a stream on the Saturday the 27th where I'll play some music and generally talk about being older. um, someone put in a meme today that I thought was good of that as they're getting older, they're calling it how whatever year they're calling it a level instead of an age. So in other words, so in my situation, I'm going to be getting to level 59. Just sounds kind of cooler. So I'm just hoping with level 59, I get like some sort of, I don't know, bonus rations or bonus tools to move forward to the next level, etc., etc. That'd be nice. So on that note, I'm going to say good night to everybody, all the millions of people out here listening along, and apologies to those on Instagram who were perhaps listening and suddenly got cut off. My apologies. Instagram's a dick.